everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I'm Albert Berg.
And I'm Tony Southcott.
And we're coming to you this week with the beginning of a new special month. We just got done with Viewer's Choice Month, and we're starting into a new tradition that we hope to do every year. We are doing Classic Horror Movie Month for Halloween, starting it right off with The Wolfman, 1941 edition.
Yeah,
Lon
Chaney
Chaney Jr.
action.
I was surprised, Tony. I was surprised at how much I liked this movie.
I was too. It's only an hour and 10 minutes, so the pacing is better than most movies from the 40s. Like, granted, I've only seen a few, but it seemed like from about 1930 till about 1990, they all had pacing issues. And this one it wasn't too bad about that.
That's a pretty wide swath of film. From 1930 to 1990, Tony?
Yeah. Well, they never fixed pacing until recently. They never got up to, I think Michael Bay, made us spoiled, basically. Made all these old movies look terrible. The Godfather's incredible, but it's also hard to watch sometimes because you just wish it was on, 1.5.
Michael Bay did spoil some things. I don't know if our viewing habits was one of them.
Only in the fact that I have, movie ADD now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Maybe everybody just got ADD in the 90s. And we were like everybody talks about how it was overdiagnosed. Maybe that really happened, and now we're seeing it in our movies. It was because we can't sit still. But this one was, it had, it took its time. It's not like it was some fast-paced action, boom, bam, zip. But it really, I think that the strength here is in how they portrayed the characters and how real these people felt. To me, anyway, with, Lon Chaney's an interesting leading man because he's not, I'm not going to say he's not good looking, but he doesn't have that, and almost to coin a pun, the alpha male type of look and personality. He's got a little bit of pudge. He's a little bit of a doofus. He's a little bit not quite all there socially. And so that made for a really interesting dynamic in the movie, I thought.
Yeah, and that it fit in with that character, the younger brother that didn't think he was going to, get anything from the family, so he strikes out on his own. It seems like he was always kind of in second place. And that made the character fit even better, or having Lon Chaney be, the not Gregory Peck or, Humphrey Bogart, the non-alpha male type.
And that plays into a couple things in the movie. I guess I'll bring up first, when we reviewed Forbidden Planet, we kind of talked about the sort of weird sexism of the era, and that is sort of on display in this movie too. You have a female lead who doesn't really do anything, and some of the stuff that he does and the way he interacts with her in the text, on the script page, it seems like it would be very creepy. And it is still a little bit creepy, but the way he acts it out, just completely deflates. I mean, he watches her through a telescope, sees her putting on these earrings, and then goes to the place where she works and, describes the earrings exactly to her and says, I want some earrings like that. And it's this incredibly, uncomfortable, over-aggressive act, and yet coming out of his mouth, you can almost forgive it because he's saying it in such a non-threatening, lovable way that it's totally at odds with sort of the way the character is written in that scene.
I was still a little creeped out.
I was a little bit creeped out, but it wasn't as much as I was with Forbidden Planet, with the captain guy sort of just taking charge and yes, I am going to have the pretty lady because I'm the captain. It seemed a little bit more forgivable in this. It
was so exploitative in Forbidden Planet too. The one guy's but you can't be healthy without kissing and all this other stuff. Just completely taking how naive she was into account. This girl had a little bit more agency, but she was still pretty willing to hang out with him for being engaged and all that.
But I bought into that though. Yeah. I really did buy their chemistry. Where she's he's like, I'll see you at 8:00, and she's like, no. He's like, yeah, but I'll be here at 8:00. And she's like, yeah, no. He's like, well, how about we go get for coffee? And he's in real life, he's way too pushy, but the way the two characters have chemistry together, you buy that she's putting him off, but she's not really, angry at him.
Yeah,
and when he shows
it's like
up,
a pretty
she's like,
solid no too. Like there's no real hesitation. She's like, just no. And
yeah,
like,
but it's not, again, it's not her like being like, no, leave me alone. She's like, nah, I'm not hanging out with you. Nope. And he's like, yeah, I am gonna hang out with you. And she's like, no, you're not. And he's like, yeah, I am. And she's like, no, you're not. And then he shows up and like, which she kind of acts surprised, but then you see that she brought her friend along to sort of have her fortune told with her, because maybe she was expecting him to show up. So she's a little bit more in touch with reality than what's her face from Forbidden Planet.
Yeah.
And I like that.
It happens later in the movie whenever she loses a little bit of that, but for the most part, she was a better portrayal than you get from a lot of these movies. She
definitely turns into. It gets a little bit annoying and just cliched at the end. How she's like, I guess I do kind of love him. And he comes on to her, but up until the point where she sort of loses that independence, I thought that she was an interesting character. She doesn't do much, but again, the portrayal and the way the character was written, I thought were really interesting. And she doesn't, we never really, up until again the sort of close to the very end, we never see her abandon her fiance. We never see him be a giant douchebag, exactly, which you sort of expect. You're like, oh well,
that's he's a douchebag, so he deserves to lose the girl and everything.
Right, yeah, and that happens in every romantic. I don't know what the name of that is. I'm sure there is a trope for it, but it happens in all of your romantic rivalry type movies. But here, he's just he seems like a pretty competent guy. He's hunting down the wolf that's killing people, which you can't really blame him for doing, even though it does happen to be that Lon Chaney is turning into that wolf.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an interest. It's a lot more subtle than you're expecting it to be. And to piggyback on that and to add on to what you said earlier about the, his sort of leaving and coming back, there's a great sense of paranoia in this movie.
Yeah.
In that he's the outsider and he's come back, and on top of all that, he's come back and there's some very mysterious circumstances with people dying and him saying it's a wolf and then it's a person and what is going on, and that sort of distrust between him and the townspeople is played really, really well.
Yeah. So, and also, I've really enjoyed seeing Bela Lugosi in this.
Which character did he play?
He was the palm reader, the psychic.
Oh, okay. I saw him at the beginning
wolf.
In the credits, and it said he was just called Bella.
Yep.
And then, I kind of lost track of the fact that it was Bela Lugosi.
Well, they let him actually, play a subtle role in this. He wasn't doing the over-the-top Bela Lugosi, the Dracula-style one. He was just playing a character, and it was nice to actually see that from him. Because so much of the stuff I've seen on Bela Lugosi is kind of like the Ed Wood style thing, where it's somebody else playing the dramatized version.
Well, and the interesting thing, we talked already about how this movie's more subtle than you expect, and one of the ways that it does that is with the gypsies. Just as characters and plot devices, they come in and, of course, they're, the ones who have the information about what a werewolf is, and they give him, hey, this is a werewolf, these are the rules, because they know about it because they're gypsies, but they're actually, especially the gypsy woman, after he kills her husband, you could expect them to go full evil, and yet she's actually trying to help out as much as she can without hopefully getting killed herself. She tells him how to, deal with the curse. She gives him the locket that's supposed to stop him from changing, which we never actually see if that would have worked because he takes it off immediately after.
Yeah.
But it could have gone in a much more stereotypical, crazy foreign gypsy people, who knows what's going on with them kind of a thing. And instead they're very human. When they find out he's a werewolf, they're like, all right, we're out. Yeah. We're getting out. But even then, the old lady sticks around. She's like, I gotta, this is kind of, I brought this a little bit to the town, so I'm gonna try to help out here, but maybe, hopefully not get killed myself.
Yeah. You can see some of the flavors of Hemlock Grove and, where they probably picked up things from this movie.
Well, and the psychological tension, too, really helped with, helped to mitigate the fact that the special effects of the time weren't up to, obviously we've seen Hemlock Grove now and amazing werewolf transformation scenes. But in this one, I was expecting like more with the face, because I've seen werewolf transformations, where they fade from one frame to another with the face, but actually the main one that they do is his feet.
Yeah.
And yet, because of the paranoia you build up, and because of the fact that they really make you identify with him, you don't really care so much that the special effects aren't so great, and even, later on that the makeup is a little bit goofy. He's still very, you feel for him, and you feel once he turns, especially after he's turned, but it's not so much about what the Wolfman's doing, but it's about what Larry Talbot is doing after he's the Wolfman, and he sees he's trying to cover up the prince and, hide the fact that these things are happening to him. I don't know. I found it really, really effective.
It definitely was. I even liked that the dad was such a skeptic. Like, he just kept trying to deny it and trying to deny it, just kept saying it was like it was a problem in his son's head, not something that was actually happening to him.
Well, you can't blame it. There's the movie is put together in such a way that you can, you understand where he's coming from. Yeah. Like, we know that Larry's turning into this thing, but if you'd done the ending just a little bit differently, you could insinuate that he was in fact crazy.
Yeah.
And that's another great element of this too, is that we can't be completely sure that he's not making some of this up. And that he isn't turning, that he doesn't have some kind of alternate personality. Which I thought was, movies of the day, I don't think were really going so far into the psychological side of things. And this really kind of cracked that open a little bit and said, gave birth of the idea of alternate personalities, even though one of the alternate personality is actually a separate creature that they turn into. But there is that sort of psychological horror aspect, and the fact that, the sort of the strained relationship between the father and son, the father not wanting to admit that something is going wrong, and the way that it ends is so tragic. Once you've seen their relationship play out, once you've seen Larry kind of beg for help from his father, and his father be like, nah, you just got some problem in your head. And then, at the very end, the father has to kill him with his own silver-headed cane. And the violence of that scene, even though you don't see him bashing his face in or anything, you see him raising the cane and bringing it down again and bringing it down again. And that's such a compelling moment, because you understand that the father does love his son, and that he is realizing sort of what's happening as he's committing this act of horrible violence against his own son. I don't know. I found that, really, really taut, and just, it gripped me through the whole movie. I thought it was really well done.
For sure. Absolutely. I'm not sure what else there really is to say about this movie. It's an hour and 10 minutes. It's available for $2.99 on Amazon. It's a 30-day rental. It's totally worth the $2.99. We ended up, it was kind of a random idea. We weren't sure which of these monster movies we were going to end up really liking. You were talking about how some of them they don't quite hold up, but this one, I was far more impressed than I thought I was going to be. I thought it was going to be cheesy effects. I was thinking it was during World War II, so they might not have had the budgets or the abilities to make everything correctly. There really aren't a lot of flaws in this movie, except for the inexplicable her falling in love thing.
I do want to add too, from the perspective of the artistry of the movie, this movie is so beautifully lit and framed and everything. There are scenes where it'll be just one shot, and I think the camera may even be on a tripod, but you'll see things come in from one side of the screen, and then there's another element, he'll be hiding from somebody, and you can see him, and you can see the character he's hiding from, and the lighting is really, really striking. They do this great, I don't want to call it effect, but a lot of the scenes are lit in such a way, especially in the forest, where the foreground is very, very stark and dark and black, and then in the background you get more of a lighted up gray, and they have the mist going in the forest. Obviously this is all on sets and soundstage, Tony. But it's really, really effectively done, and it's a, sort of example of how to do that right, and why, movie directors of the time really wanted to be on sets more than, outside, because they could control that lighting a lot more. And I know that sort of these days, sets aren't such a big deal. People are, they'll shoot outside and they'll shoot wherever, and but
I assume nowadays it's a lot cheaper to like set up a generator and get massive lights and everything. So,
well, yeah,
a little bit spoiled.
And again, we see the same kind of thing we saw in Forbidden Planet, right? Like there's maybe 4 or 5 sets. You have the sort of the lobby of the mansion, the telescope room, you have the forest, you have the village, and you have the interior of the bookshop, and then there's like some gypsy, fortune teller. But you get a lot of reuse of stuff. And again, it's not a very long movie, but it's neat to see that sort of carrying over of almost like a play, where you have these sets that they're like, all right, we're on this set now, and we're going to use it, and then, so you can sort of imagine somebody like, carting off all the stuff from the library and then bringing in the trees in between, acts or whatever, and doing this on a stage. So, I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful. A really beautiful movie. Technically, just impeccable. The special effects were not able to do probably what they would have liked to do at the time, but the camera work is, especially for the time, you're dealing with a lot more stationary cameras than you do now. Today you have a lot more handheld stuff and a lot more movement of the camera, sweeping motions and boom arms and stuff like that I don't think that were as available at the time, but what they made use of what they had really, really well. So I was really impressed by that.
For sure. I was trying to look up some of the other movies that George Wagner, the director, has done, but I haven't really heard of many. It's like The Fighting Kentuckian and 77 Sunset Strip, so this is probably the best thing you're going to get from him. At least the most
Well, maybe some of the other stuff is good too, and we just haven't heard of it. There's a ton of movies got made, Tony, even back then.
Well, I'm saying, like, as far as an enduring hit, this is the one that everybody's heard of. Everybody's seen the poster. And I didn't really mind the werewolf effects, like the actual costume. Like, it was definitely older. But I was kind of inspired last night just to draw it, and I had kind of fun with that. So it really wasn't that bad. You don't get the transitions that you get from like American Werewolf in London or anything, but it's still pretty fun.
Well, and that's inspired all that stuff too, right? Like this, and it's interesting in this one, they don't, we're used to werewolf rules, and we know that like, okay, werewolves turn on the full moon. They don't have that in this. It says when the autumn moon is bright, is the sort of rhyme that they use, that the werewolf will appear. But that could mean any number of days from, when the moon isn't, waning, I think is the word. As long as it's bright enough, the werewolf will show up. It doesn't have to be a complete full moon. So he turns 3 or 4 nights in a row, and they, if you're used to werewolf rules, again, you'll be like, why would he, what is this? But it's, in this anyway, it's not specifically the full moon. So it's interesting to see how those werewolf rules changed. Probably
You've been going for like a week right now with this whole supermoon stuff. It's been so bright out there.
I did not look at the supermoon, Tony. Would you believe that? I sat inside and watched television. I was tired.
Until 2033. It was a really cool. It was just really cool seeing that eclipse. It got so dark red on the full moon. I enjoyed seeing that.
I plan to live till 2033, Tony.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long time, but it's not that long of a time. It's only like, less than 20 years.
Yeah. My goal is
I will be alive for that. I'll see it. I'll catch it the next time, okay?
My goal is to see Halley's Comet, which is like 2076 or something like that.
Yeah, no, I probably won't get to see that unless I'm exceptionally long-lived. But I did see it when it came through last time, so that was cool.
I saw Hale Bopp, but I didn't really see Halley's Comet. I said Halley's Comic because that's the name of the comic book shop down the road from me.
Hey, you guys have been a great audience. I'll see you in 76 years. Take care. Tip your waiters.
I think you got a pretty good shot of seeing Halley's Comet.
I would be like 90. What year did you say it would come out in?
I think it's 2076 or something like that.
I don't think I'll be alive. I mean, I might be, Tony, but I'll be old.
Our generation's lifespans are probably going to be in the 130s, 140s. If not,
okay, Tony. We'll see. I feel very confident that I'm not gonna make it that far, and if I do, would you even want to live that long?
It's only about quality of life stuff. If you're 90 and it feels like you're 50, it's not going to be that bad.
Yes, but will you? Nobody yet has been 90 and felt like they're 50. People who are 90 feel like crap. Like,
yeah, but they
I'm sure they're glad to be alive still, but like, the body starts falling apart.
Yeah, my grandpa's 95 and he doesn't really care about making it to 100, even though he's got the longevity to do it.
So I'm not really took a morbid turn here, Tony.
Yeah, you're the one
trying to tell
all
people like you need to die
like,
soon.
Oh, who would want to experience life for an extra like 50 years, especially if you feel good?
If you feel good, it's fine. But I'm just doubting that, Tony. I'm doubting that medical science is as miraculous as you think it's gonna be.
I think it could be even more than that. Like just with the way things are moving, especially with biomedical. So
okay,
we'll see.
And we'll turn into werewolves whenever we want to.
Oh, there's probably a good VR game for that coming.
But that is all I think I have to say about the Wolfman. I almost said American Werewolf in London, Tony. But no, it was. I think you guys should watch it. It's an excellent movie. Relatively short, beautifully done. The story's really cool. And, it looks great, except minus some of the effects stuff. But even that, like, the story is strong enough to carry you through the sort of the dated effects if you've got any kind of patience at all. So I highly recommend it to those of you movie lovers out there.
I definitely would as well. Like, strange how the 1941 version completely beats out the 2010 remake.
Did you see the remake? Because I did not, Tony. Do you want to talk about that?
I saw parts
bit?
of it. Like, it was just on HBO once, and I started it up, and I was just like, how do you mess up whenever you're doing the Wolfman and you've got Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins? Like, how do you mess that movie up?
I have no idea.
The answer is too much CGI and poor storytelling.
I was going to say, the CGI shouldn't... Again, we've seen the effects here were not... Like, you didn't look at it and be like, I totally believe that guy's turning into a wolf. It's so scary. Like, the CGI should have been fine, even if it wasn't good. Like...
There were just parts where the entire thing looked phony. Like, the transformations are fine, but, like, him running on rooftops and everything, it was too CGI. It was just... It didn't feel like it was tactile or real.
Okay. And the great thing about, like, in the day, they knew that they had the special effects, right? They were still trying to do effects that they knew probably didn't look exactly real, but they also knew not to lean on that so heavily.
Yeah.
I think that the danger of CG is that you assume that people are going to think that it's real, and so you're like, let's just throw it all in.
Yeah. Well, it's like,
and you need to know the limits.
Like, it's good whenever you at least have a set, but if you're doing like entire towns and things like that in the background, it just doesn't quite look right.
Well, I was going to mention too, there are some shots in this that are like composite shots of photographs. You have at the very opening when you see the mansion, like that is not a live shot of a mansion. That's like a painting of a mansion on top of something else.
Yeah. That looked a little bit phony now. I'm sure it looked fine back in the day, but it didn't take me out of the story that much. Well,
and also, to bring up effects and stuff, I was actually on a conversation on Reddit talking about Forbidden Planet, actually, because we were talking about effects back in the day, mentioning that the Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Lady Vanishes, I almost forgot the title, but uses, like, the opening shot of that is supposed to be this alpine town, and it's kind of a panning shot down to the alpine town as like a car travels through the town, but it's a miniature. You can see that like the car's being pulled along on a string and like the camera's like, even back in the day they were using special effects to sub in for things that they didn't want to have to shoot live, and even back in the day it didn't always look great, but if you tell a good story, you could get around that.
Yeah. You'd think that they'd have some stock footage of something like that.
Well, I think Alfred Hitchcock was a perfectionist to the point where he wouldn't want to use somebody else's, camera work and stuff. Like, he's like, no, it needs to look like this, it needs to be lit like this, and he couldn't get, like, an entire city lit like that, so he's just like, we'll just build a miniature. Because he didn't like shooting outside, Tony. He liked shooting on a soundstage.
I need to see a few more of his classic movies like Vertigo and such. I've only seen Rope and Rear Window.
There was a post on Reddit about Rear Window, and I think we've mentioned this in the past, but showing the set that they built for that, none of that, like, exterior of the apartment was outside. Like, it was all on this giant soundstage, and they built this 4-story tall apartment with the whole courtyard and everything. And I think they even, like, knocked out the basement so they can, get the right camera angles that they wanted and stuff, specifically because, again, you could control all the lighting, and they really, really were about that really particular specific lighting. And these days we've gotten into more naturalistic stuff, but it's important to remember, the importance of good lighting in a movie. So.
Well, in this podcast, like, I've had bizarre differences in lighting as far as the video podcast
we're
goes.
It in, Tony. We're becoming a little bit more proficient at our podcast recording setup, and as we get further along, and hopefully things get better and funds increase, we'll be able to do more cooler things and make a better podcast. So
yeah,
but this is what it is right now. So.
Like, the entire, like, my forehead is just this perfect, like, reflecting thing for light. So if I put a little too much light, I can blind all of you just straight into the.
I've actually, in my camera, I've got, where is it at? Right there. I've got a white spot right there. I may actually take some of that white down in post, because I like just bing, like the light shining on me just bounces right off. Anyway, we're getting into too much technical stuff, Tony. Nobody cares about that.
I think it's time for some viewer questions.
That is something people do care about. And you can send your question in, by the way, at any time to @HEPodcast, and we will answer it on the podcast if we like your question.
Yeah, sometimes you guys, just terrible. Most often you're awesome.
Sometimes you're dumb.
So are we. It's okay.
You should be ashamed.
I asked for people to rhyme, and I don't think anybody rhymed today. I don't know why I asked them to rhyme, but, just put some effort in.
They weren't poets, and they do know it, Tony.
Yep. I'm going to ask
Danny Brophy, where you at, man? Our friend Danny Brophy is talking about being a poet. He's all like, I'm a poet now. I do poetry stuff. What?
He got his
I'm all sophisticated. David Foster Wallace. This is how Danny Brophy sounds.
Well, David Foster Wallace poetry would be like 74 parentheticals to get back to the original line.
Which is exactly how Danny Brophy writes.
Yes.
Hit us with those questions, Tony.
The first question comes from our good friend Morden Post, who joined us last week. Jen asks, sorry I didn't see your request sooner. Who would win in a fight between Benicio del Toro and Lon Chaney Jr.?
I think Benicio del Toro would win.
Yeah, especially after seeing some of the stuff from Sicario and various other.
I haven't seen Sicario yet, however.
I'm just saying from the trailers.
Having seen Lon Chaney Jr. with his shirt off, that dude is not ripped at all.
Benicio del Toro looks like he could actually fight, and he's all scarred up and just kind of badass looking.
Well, yeah, he looks like gnarly. He looks like he would just fight dirty and mean. And Lon Chaney Jr. Now, maybe I don't know if Benicio del Toro was the Wolfman in the Wolfman remake.
He was.
But I don't know how they would stack up as Wolfmen per se.
The newer one is a much more vicious, much bigger werewolf. Like it's more the American Werewolf in London style, where it changes like the bone structure, like everything changes, not just get a little bit hairy and get some bigger teeth.
Okay.
So I think that Benicio del Toro would probably win. He might not be able to charm the ladies quite as well as Lon Chaney Jr., despite the pudgy appearance, though.
Well, again, I think Lon Chaney Jr. again has that. I don't know, just something about him is just so like lovable and non-threatening that like he can, you just kind of want to just hug him a little bit. You're like, aw, Lon Chaney Jr.
I'm actually going to be seeing Ron Chaney Jr. in a couple days.
I don't think he's a junior, but yes.
Oh, Ron Chaney. Yeah, excuse me. But like that's going to be interesting for you. You pretty much claim this one. You're like, what? They're having a live score of Phantom of the Opera? Like,
yes, the original. I didn't realize this. So, Lon Chaney was an actor that was mainly active in the like silent film era, and then his son, whose name is not actually Lon Chaney Jr., but that became a stage name because got to capitalize on Pop's popularity, was the guy who starred in the original Wolfman, and then Ron Chaney. I don't know if he stars in anything or not, but he's going to be there to at the Mile High Film Festival. They will have a showing of the original Phantom of the Opera from like 1920 something with a live score. I'm hoping it's like orchestral, but I will accept piano if it's good.
Yeah.
But like I'm just pumped to see that because I think it would be neat to see in a theater projected with other people like and a live score one of these old silent movies. Hopefully it's not super long. You know, like we're going to be doing a lot of stuff for this Mile High Film Festival, which we will be at when this episode comes out, by the way. We will be there when you hear or see this, or we'll be back, you know, if you see it later.
Yeah.
But
we're going to be doing our live coverage. We're going to be doing a lot of tweeting, a lot of different blog posts. We're going to be trying to make this we're going to try to glean as much as we can from this and get you guys as much content because it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Plus, it's the first time Al and I are actually meeting in person, so it's exciting stuff.
It's also going to be exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
I'm already tired thinking about it.
I'm already tired from trying to get the stuff ready that needs to come out on the days that I won't be here because there's so much video content, and I'm like, edit. There's like things that have to come out on those days and things that have to come out like on the day I'm going to be flying back, and I don't want to get home and be like, all that long flight. Oh no, I gotta edit Minecraft Dirt Block.
Yeah, it's not like we actually get like a weekend to relax. We're gonna be doing a lot of cool stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited to go, but it's gonna be pretty damn exhausting. Like after the Stanley Film Festival, I was just spent. Like that entire next week was just like the least productive week I've ever had.
I am pumped though. This is actually not part of the film festival, but we are gonna be there on Thursday when the theater that hosts the film festival will be showing its midnight showing of The Martian, which is not actually at midnight, thank God.
Yeah, they just decided that they were going to, like, it used to be you had to do it at midnight. It had to be released on that Friday. At 12:01, they could show it. Now they're just like, we could use the extra money. Let's just throw an 8 o'clock, a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, and a midnight showing.
I'm just, there's one movie that I really want to see that has only a showing at like 11:40. I've never gone to a movie that late, Tony, before. And I'm not, we'll see if I get there. It's a movie called Night Fair. It's a French film, I think, about this guy who decides to not pay his taxi driver, and the taxi driver turns into the Terminator and just comes after him. I mean, not literally the Terminator, but the guy's just like, I want my taxi fare, you're going to be dead. And all of the people who you're with. I mean, the trailer looks pretty amazing. Like, it just seems like one of those things where you're like, I'm a douchebag, but I'm not. And then it's like, oh, the consequences are so much worse than I expected.
Yeah.
And even possibly deserved.
It's interesting going to those movies because, first off, you're already going to be an hour different as far as how late it's going to be, so it's going to feel like it's later for you. And those movies, after you've watched like 3 or 4 other movies, like I almost fell asleep during a movie called Deathgasm. And that was a really good movie, but I was out of it. That's why I didn't end up going and seeing Stung, because it was another midnight showing after I'd seen one the night before. It's just too many movies. Not too many.
You gotta bring us some, you're gonna have a cooler for us to eat out of out in your truck. You need to have some Monsters in that cooler, Tony.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's gonna be either be Red Bull or Monster, or like, I really want to find an energy drink company to sponsor us. Like, this, if you guys work for an energy drink company, slide some over here. We'll keep them on the shelves behind us. I am totally willing to shill for free energy drinks.
We've actually been trying to get that particular thing going forever in a day.
Well, the closest thing we got was like these little 5-hour energy drinks that look like a shotgun shell, but then the company folded like before we could finish that deal.
Oh well. In the future, Tony, they'll realize that podcasters are the people to sponsor energy drink.
Yeah.
We need the energy.
Just like I guess we could go for like Caveman Coffee or something like that. They're always on podcasts. That's an energy drink.
I'm not familiar with Caveman Coffee.
It's pretty much like the coffee I make with the butter and the coconut oil, but they actually have like an individual coffee brand. Like, it's supposed to be really good single plantation, like, coffee. You can get it at Caveman Coffee. They didn't pay us for me to say that. I've just been wanting to try it. They also have what's called, like, this nitro coffee that comes in a can that's supposed to be, like, 12 cups of coffee or something if you drink it. Kind of want some of that.
That sounds like a little bit much, Tony. I mean, it's not midnight yet. It's about 10 o'clock here for me. I'm pretty well awake. So
I just want to feel like my heartbeat in my fingertips and in my forehead. Like I want to be buzzing, man.
That doesn't sound like fun. That sounds like, I go for a run for that feeling, Tony. That's a real rush.
Yeah, but you can get the same thing. You could go for a run and get there twice as fast if you had that. And you'd have like only 2/3 a higher chance of dying of a heart attack.
Did you say we had some more questions, Tony?
Yes, we do. All right. Next question comes from Geek Girl Co., who is, I believe, Lindsay. Spend the rest of your life without coffee or drink coffee and no other beverage forever. How appropriate.
That was actually really accurately timed. I think I would go without coffee.
There's just
a lot
too
of other
many other
caffeine
good
beverages.
things to drink.
Do what?
There's just too many other good things to drink. I'm sure I could bend the rules and get a coffee beer or something, but I love Mountain Dew occasionally. I love Diet Dr. Pepper. I like all these other things.
Horchata.
What's that?
Horchata. You ever have horchata?
I've never had it.
It's a great, it's kind of like a rice water drink, if that makes sense. It's got sugar and it's sort of cloudy, milky, but it's really sweet and really good.
I've never tried it.
I get it at my local Mexican restaurant. I don't know where other people get it. The version I drink is not alcoholic. I've heard some people say that they thought it was alcoholic, and I'm like, this restaurant doesn't serve alcohol, so, I don't, but maybe there's an alcoholic version out there somewhere. It's really delicious, though.
I'm sure somebody's made it alcoholic somewhere out there. But yeah, I think if I couldn't just drink coffee for the rest of my life, hell, I love cold water more than anything. So I think I would have to pass on that. I could give up coffee if that was the only thing I could ever drink again.
No more chocolate milk?
Yeah, that would just be lame.
Yeah. There's a lot of supplements that could do what coffee does pretty well. Although coffee usually makes me poop better than most caffeine drinks do, Tony. Do you have that problem?
No, I never have. People always tell me that, and they're like, "Oh, it's like Old Faithful. It's just a couple hours after coffee, hitting the bowl, yeah, it's gross." People give me the most graphic descriptions. One of my friends texts me every time. It's like, "What's wrong with you? Stop it." We'll go to my favorite restaurant, which is Hoo Hut, which is a Mongolian grill, and afterwards, he calls it the Hoo Hut Madness. And I don't need updates about size and consistency, okay?
I don't it's weird too, because it's no other, I don't have a problem with food. I can go to eat, Mexican food all day long, Taco Bell, not a problem. Sometimes if I eat too much meat or whatever, I'm a little bit corked up for a while, but other than that, I don't generally have much of a problem, but coffee just kind of gives me a little laxative. It's not even, it's just sort of oils the sides, Tony, just comes sliding out. It's good stuff.
Like a log over a waterfall.
I can't believe this is where the podcast went. Thanks a lot, Geek Girl Co. Actually, yeah, it's a cool new fan, by the way, Geek Girl Co. But
yeah, she shows up for our live streams, and I actually have met her because she's in Fort Collins, so it's pretty cool. We went and saw
maybe she can come say hi at the Stanley Film Festival. Donald Eichfluck said something about. Oh no, he said about us meeting. For a second, when I did read his tweet though, and I was like, is Donald in Colorado as well? Are we gonna meet him? But I guess not. I believe
he's somewhere down south. I'm not sure the exact state without looking it up.
If you guys, if there are any people listening to this in Denver, Colorado, and you want to meet us, tweet at the HE Podcast or at Tony Southcott, and or at T Southcott is the handle, and maybe we can arrange something. I can't guarantee anything, but if we can, we'd
find some other people. We'll try to do a lunch or something like that, even if the lunch is us standing outside of my car.
Tony's giving out PB&Js.
Yeah.
It's not in the budget, guys.
Ultimately, I am a cheap ass. We will be eating sandwiches for most of this. We have a per diem where we can go and probably go out to eat and everything. But hey, why spend it whenever you can keep it?
There better be some canned ravioli in that
Now, the way you do that
well.
is like you put the can like right on the front part of the car and just let the sun heat it up. I used to do that all the time, like especially during the summertime. You just put a can like right up on the dashboard, let it heat up all day, and then by the time lunch rolls around, it's ready to go.
I used to have the opposite problem. Like I would have sandwiches and stuff, and they like, I would try to pack like a cold pack, but here in Florida the heat is just horrendous. So inevitably by the time lunch rolled around, I would have a sandwich, and at least, like, sometimes you'd put it against the cold pack, and the cold pack would still be kind of cool, but the other side of the sandwich would be warm. So you'd have, like, this odd, like gradients of temperature, and the warm side would inevitably be, like, a little bit stale, too. So you'd have to, like, figure out which side you wanted to eat so that this, like, you don't want the stale side to be against your tongue, because that's nasty. Thankfully, I don't have that job anymore. That was a weird experience. I was telling my wife that my first full-time job was a brick mason's assistant, and I learned stuff in one summer that I'll probably never use again. But like as a brick mason's assistant, it was super helpful. You know, like things. Do you know what a brick board is, Tony?
I do not.
Okay, so here's a fun fact for you guys. Super fun. Like, you're gonna blow your mind and be like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I tuned into the Human Echoes podcast to learn that about brick boards. No other podcast has information about brick boards exclusively here.
There's probably like a brick layers union podcast out there somewhere.
Yeah, but they're not cool like us. So a brick board is the way bricks come to your, like when they come to be put on your house, they come in a big like block, and there is there's stacks and stacks of bricks. They're held together with bands, but there is a hole about 3/4 of the way down the block for like forklifts to stick in there so that they can lift the bricks up. And also, once you break those apart, then they're in big slabs of bricks, or I think they're called sides. And you have I think it's a brick truck, and that has a shorter fork that'll stick in that little hole in the slab of bricks, and you can tote your slabs around the house so that you have, you can distribute the whole block around. But when you get down to that slab, because it's just a stack of bricks, the way they keep the bricks from falling into that hole is they have a really thin board. And that, at least on our crew, is called a brick board. And the brick board could be used, you could take it and you could use it to, knock off, extra, little flakes of concrete that had stuck on the bricks after you had scored it. And it was interesting how that, little stuff like that got reused as tools. You also had the J-bar, which there's a special tool that they make to do this, but we use something called J-bar that it was just a hooked bar, and you would run the hooked part through the cracks between the bricks to knock out all the excess mortar. Anyway, that's such, I did that so many times, set up, tore down, put scaffolding up, raked the excess mortar out of the bricks, all along the side. I did that for a solid summer, and now that knowledge is stuck in my head, and it's completely useless to me, Tony.
There might be a day whenever you need to put some bricks up.
Yeah, but I'm not, the part that I didn't learn how to do was actually laying the brick. That was for the professionals. I was the guy who toted the boards around and mixed the mud and put the mud in the wheelbarrow. I know how to push a wheelbarrow full of concrete, Tony. They're super heavy, by the way, and you do not stop. If you stop, that wheelbarrow's going over.
We occasionally had to do a lot of work with concretes whenever we would do basement finishes. We'd get the jackhammer out, bust up a floor so people could have have their bathroom downstairs and everything. And we had to do some wheelbarrows of concrete and everything. But I got lucky in that I did plumbing long enough that I was moving past the apprentice stage and actually learned how to do a lot of the copper piping. I was able to do most of the waistline piping, but sometimes it got a little bit crazy and I didn't know how to do it up to code, so I'd have to ask some questions. But I did that for so many summers. It's definitely awesome to know. I love trades.
It's interesting too. There's stuff that I know about I know how to mix paint with a manual paint mixer from a card. And nobody needs to know that anymore because they have computer mixers. I was working at Walmart when they had the sort of the manual pump paint mixer, and I mixed paint that way for a long time. And then they're like, yeah, we got rid of that. And so I had that knowledge just stuck in my head. Like, I was good at it. Granted, I wasn't as good as some people. Like, if you do that long enough, you get to be like, well, you're going to add a little dash of this and, like, actually match paint by eyesight, which is
That's
incredible.
insane. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that.
But, it's just that, like, yeah, that bit of knowledge in your head and sort of your experience with this machine is completely irrelevant now because technology has made it, pointless.
Well, like, your dad's probably one of the last people that knows how to work, like, some of the printing press machines he uses.
I don't know about the last people because that technology is really expensive, but it is a little bit arcane now. Like, he's using printing, like, second generation stuff that's sort of offcast by people who are like, now we've got all the computer things. He uses computers, but nowadays they have, like, presses that laser etch the plates, so you don't even have to expose them, this is going over a ton of people's heads at this point. But it is a little bit less common, it's not like his knowledge would not necessarily be applicable in a commercial, press place, where they're printing a newspaper or whatever. But he networks with people and, stays in touch with other old timer types who know about presses and a lot of experience in teaching other people so that it's not just him who knows how to run them. It's really complicated though, it's right, mix of ink and water and, there's such a specialized knowledge that's required for some of that stuff. And I think eventually that's going to go away, with computers becoming more prevalent. But, it's fascinating how a lot of stuff that we used to know how to do, a lot of skills, have been lost. Nobody needs to know how to make a wagon wheel anymore, but that's a really, really specific and difficult thing to do.
Yeah. It's like my grandpa, he's like in the last line of business for people making short gauge rail line parts. Like he works in a machine shop down in Durango, and they're working on the last working set of short line railroad and the engines for that, and it's the last in the entire country. Like all the other short gauge railroad stuff has been taken out, and they have the last working engines. And in another 100 years, who knows if that'll even be a thing? In another 50 years, it might not be a thing.
I do want to bring up too, and I've mentioned this on the podcast in the past, but if you haven't heard me mention the movie Linotype, the movie, spelled Linotype, that is a fascinating documentary that's along these same lines, talking about lost knowledge, and it's about the machine that bridged the gap from hand-placed typesetting, where, back originally when they invented the printing press and the movable type, people had to go through boxes of, letters and be like, all right, T-H-E space, and like place it in and do justification and things by hand. And someone at some point invented, I think it was in the late 1800s, invented a machine that you could push buttons and it would melt lead and cast it into molds that would then be placed onto a big brick of text, making that process of making books exceptionally a lot more faster until eventually we got digital typesetting. But those machines are so cool looking and so fascinating and so intricate in what they do, and there are still people today who use them for, making business cards and stuff where they want to have that pressed in style text.
Kind of embossed style.
But there's like a few people who still know how to use them, but anyway, it's a really, really fascinating documentary and a little bit sad because they talk about these really incredible machines, how many of them have just been scrapped because they're not valuable anymore. Like they're just taking up so much space that
expensive to run too. Like if you're having to like work with lead and everything else like all the time, like it's got to be so expensive to keep that machine maintained.
Well, not just expensive, dangerous. You get burned. Like if you didn't know what you were doing, like the machine would spit hot lead at you, at your legs as you're running it. Did you get linotype leg?
I've had balls of lead melt on me before.
And speaking of lost skills, like there were people who were exceptionally skilled at typing on these machines because there's not a QWERTY keyboard like we're used to on a laptop or on a typewriter. It was Yeaton Shreedlu. It was all the most common letters up at the top. Is what they called it. And they would even they had a sort of a mythological figure that they named Eaton Shreedlu, who would, sort of the patron god of the linotype. But there are people who are really, really fast and, because you can't make mistakes because there's no backspace key. It's at melting lead as you're going. So people that were exceptionally good at this, that at some point just they're like, yep, we don't need your skill anymore because computers came along. And those people spent their entire lives getting good at this, and all of a sudden they're, basically worthless.
Hopefully they were retirement age. I'm sure most of them weren't, though.
I don't know all the specifics, but it's just one of those things that's sad, again, where you're like, it's good that we have technology coming along and making this better and making this faster, and obviously we don't necessarily want to go back to that, but man, is that a cool, and kind of sad thing to lose that skill.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if it's not useful anymore, it's like, this is something that people knew, and now they don't. So, anyway, I recommend that movie, though. If you can find Linotype the movie on Amazon, and it's not too expensive, rent it. I don't own it, but I watched it once, and it's worth at least a watch. It will really stick with you if you're, I don't know, if you're anything like me anyway, and you like old stuff and machines and things. It's very neat.
Oh, just seeing the old engineering is always cool to me, and I can't even imagine what it was like trying to come up with that machine, all the work that had to go into it, how many engineers had to figure out every little aspect of it. I've seen some engineers work on some pretty cool stuff, like solar panel machines and things like that. That it's pretty incredible work, but I have no idea how many engineers and how they would figure out every little aspect of that. So it's definitely interesting. We do have
people are smart and we aren't. So
yeah, that's why we run a podcast. We're not engineers out there. We both tried. You were going for physics. I was going for chemistry.
Turns out you got to be good at math.
Yeah.
Turns out you got to be great at math, by the way.
Yeah, it's not
I was good at math at the time. I can see the tweet coming in or the text coming in from Joseph. How many hours in a day?
6 hours a shift.
I divided a day into 3 segments and got 6 hours a piece for the segments. So
yeah, that's
I'll
something
never live that down.
just real quick. I think we are going to be participating in Extra Life, which is a charity where you basically stream gaming for 24 hours. And we're going to be trying to raise some money and everything. It's not going to be a huge exorbitant amount or anything, but you will be able to tune into us as we beat ourselves raw trying to stream. So it's going to be pretty fun and it's going to be pretty hard, but I think that you guys will enjoy it in the end.
Beat ourselves raw is a little bit of an awkward phrasing there, Tony. I will not be beating myself raw. I just want to say.
You're going to see Al and I getting that achievement in Tabletop Simulator. Play a peaceful game of chess for 1 hour. Things like that.
That was really awkward wording, Tony. After the conversations on Twitter we've had about fanfiction.
Yeah, that stuff was freaking me out.
Following up beating ourselves raw with you will see Al and me. Not a good word choice. I just want to put that out there. Not cool.
Yeah.
Stop encouraging Sherlock Madam.
It wasn't Sherlock Madam. It was pretty much mostly John Jones. John Jones was the one that was getting it real creepy.
Well, I think that was Sherlock Madam actually, I think, logged off of Twitter to actually go and write one. You see, he was making the joke. She didn't participate in that conversation because she was off somewhere making a WordPress for Alan Tony fanfic.
Yeah. / I'm glad that that Hannah is on the arena this week, so she had other things to write.
I'm up. My story's going up as we're recording this today, so
I made the
pretty
art
excited.
for
I'm
it.
fighting out against Donald Eichvlucht, and I have not got to read his story yet, but I will be reading it shortly after we record this, so we will see how bad I get my pants beat off.
Phrasing.
And how raw they will be when they're beat off.
Speaking of Hannah, she actually did ask us a question.
All right, hit me.
You forget your entire life except for one memory. Which memory is it?
I'm gonna let you go first, Tony.
I think I've had a lot of this exact memory because I went to a lot of it, but probably being at Mile High Stadium with my dad and watching the Broncos, whenever I was 10 years old and they were like, they won the Super Bowl that year and everything. Just like being up in those stands, watching the games with my dad, like that is probably my best set of memories.
So now, in the context of the question, I have to ask, life still goes on in this, right?
So you can make new memories.
So, like, I'll still be married, I'll still have kids. It's not like my life has disappeared, my memories just disappeared.
Yeah.
I have a lot of videos of my kids being cute. I was gonna say my kids, or something with my wife, but I feel like I could rebuild, enough of that relationship to not have to have it. And sort of watch stuff with my kids to kind of get an idea of things that I might have forgotten there. So I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
There are some people, kind of going back to what I was talking about with old jobs, there are people that I knew and I don't know anymore, but I would hate to lose the memory of having known them. But it's not a single, that's not a single thing where I'm like, April 4th, 12 p.m. The sandwich that I ate, that one moment of biting into that perfect grilled cheese with jalapenos. Like, it's not like one of those kinds of memories, so that's a little bit difficult.
You wouldn't pick, like, your wedding or something like that?
I don't care about my wedding. Like, I barely remember it now. Like, I stood there and she walked up the aisle and we said some stuff and then we ate some food and we left. And we had to take pictures in between, which was stupid.
Yeah.
The whole, just forget about that superstition about seeing the bride in her dress ahead of time and take your pictures the day before. It was the worst part. I'd gladly forget the wedding. Like, the marriage I don't want to forget, but the wedding was not, it was just a wedding. Like, you've seen them, you know how they go.
Yeah.
You know what the words are. And then afterwards you're married. Like,
I was
never very particularly superstitious about that.
I was so grateful at the last wedding I went to that, like, they kept the actual part where, like, they're up there standing to under 15 minutes. Because I've been to some weddings where they're, like, standing there holding each other's hands for, like, a good hour and a half while, like, there's basically a full sermon going on. And it's like, just make it snappy, say some cool stuff, and marry the people. Don't make them stand there for an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, we were relatively in and out pretty quick. I think the whole thing was maybe 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And you have the music play and the stuff like that, but it wasn't, we were fairly low budget, first of all. We did it in our church. And then, like, for the reception, we just, like, were in the church fellowship hall with some food. Like, this was not an expensive wedding. We, mother-in-law, thank God, by the way, brought, like, and made a lot of the food. I think that they bought the wedding cake, but they made the groom's cake, which was German chocolate, which is delicious. And they just had finger foods and stuff, and just really kept it relatively inexpensive. And I recommend that to people who do not have the money. Like, don't go into debt for a wedding, because it's just the one day.
Yeah.
It does not matter.
My sister went, like, almost the too cheap route. Her and her husband just went to the courthouse and then went up to, like, a weekend of gambling.
Well, listen, I want people to be happy on their special day, all right? And if that's what you want to do, that's great. And if you really want to have a nice wedding, like, if that is just something that will make you particularly happy, then, spend a little bit of money, maybe, like...
Don't spend a house down payment on it, though. Like, I've known people who spend, like, $25,000 on a wedding, and it's so insane to me.
Well, yeah, and me and my wife are pretty pragmatic people, so I was lucky in my marriage that she wasn't like, I want to have, like, all this, it was a nice wedding, and, it was enjoyable and stuff, but it did not cost us an arm and a leg. I think it was maybe $2,000 or $3,000 all told. And again, really thankful that her parents picked up quite a bit of that, bill. So, and did a lot of the work that was required. So. Yeah.
The last wedding I went to, like, it had a pig roast and everything, so I imagine it wasn't the most expensive wedding, but it was definitely, like, really good. It was a country wedding at their, like, father-in-law's house, so they probably did not spend a whole lot, but it was a nice thing.
Yeah, if possible, use venues that you already have access to, that you may not have to pay a lot for, and
this is the wedding portion of the podcast.
I've been to really nice, expensive weddings where the bride and the groom, I think, could afford it. And that's fine if you can afford it, but don't, like, look at what other people are doing and say, I want to do that because they were able to do it. You may not, other people are able to afford stuff you can't afford. I'm sorry. That's how life works. That's how my life works. And that's, don't try to live up to somebody else's standards just because they have cool stuff.
Yeah.
So. I think that'll about wrap us up, Tony.
Yeah, I think so. Like, we got a little bit distracted today, but I think we did all right. What I want you guys to do, and I want Al to help me out with this because he's better about begging for money than I am sometimes. I want you guys to go to humanechoes.com. Down on the right-hand side, you are going to see a button that says Become a Member. If you become a member, you'll be able to access our bonus podcast, which we put out every other week right now. We might end up upping that. We're just trying to figure out how to do it with all the other content we're putting out there for free. It's an awesome way to support the podcast. $2 a month will get you into the base level where you can get the free podcast. $5 a month, 10, 20. We've got all sorts of different levels on there.
Well, I'm glad I could help. I'm ready whenever you're ready for me to jump in, Tony. Give us money.
Yeah. See, Al's better at it. He didn't beat around the bush. He's just like, give us money.
But seriously, though, there are some of you guys who help support the podcast, and the bonus podcast is a lot of fun to make and a lot of fun for you to listen to, and we really want to, to be able to make that available to you guys. And those of you are also who support are also helping make content available to everybody else who's mooching off of the free stuff that we're putting out there. So you should be ashamed. No, you shouldn't be ashamed. We're thankful for all of our viewers. But if you can help, and if you think it's worth a few of your dollars, we used to call this the tip jar before we were able to make extra content for the members. And really, that's still one way to think about it. Is that, like, listen, if you've gotten some value out of this show and you think, hey, I got enough happiness to be worth a couple, $3, $4, $5 a month, then we would love it if you could send it our way, and we love being able to provide extra content for y'all now. We're hopefully going to be able to expand some of that, but it's a little bit tricky making it available only for members. The Rooster Teeth model is really interesting, and it requires a lot of sort of technical stuff on the website side that we're a lot easier able to do with the audio than with some other things, but we would like to expand a little bit more, but as we go forward, we'll be figuring more of this stuff out, and you guys are helping to make all of this podcast possible, and we thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Next week, we will be coming back with Dracula. I'm not sure which year it is. We'll tweet it out. And
the original Dracula, the one with Bela Lugosi.
Yeah, not the Keanu Reeves one. And Gary.
Not Nosferatu. The Universal one.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys have an excellent week. We will see you next Friday.
Bye.